So you see a lot online, people griefing people with ADHD because they overspend. They get called greedy. They get, it's just a shopping addiction and things like that. Not realizing that one of, the main things with ADHD is impulsivity control, and they struggle, shopping sort of. If they see something they like, they're going to have it, and it's also that dopamine. The dopamine's low, so then they're going to get that little dopamine hit as well as the impulsivity, and this is why they overspend and sort of shop till they drop.
So a lot of people don't realise that that's a big part of ADHD, like not being able to save, not being able to have your money in steady accounts like the average person, because you just want to spend. If you've got a bit of money there, you think, oh, I've got money, let me just go out shopping, let me just spend it, and it's because you're thinking of the dopamine hit rather than the long-term risks of spending your money. I'm not going to be able to afford gas or electric, I'm not going to be able to afford fuel in my car, because you're chasing that hit. But not a lot of people realise it's an ADHD trait. People just think, oh, like I'm just bad with money, when actually you're not. It's part of a condition.
Well, it's the hyper focusing, isn't it? That you see something and then you'll hyper focus on it, whether this is keep looking at it online or going to the shop and look at it, and you won't stop because you're so hyper focused on this thing. And then when you get it, it's that dopamine hit and it's like, yes, and then you quickly have that drop. So then they look for the next thing that they want to crave that sort of dopamine hit, and it's a repeated cycle, and then it leaves a lot of people with ADHD with a lot of debt, and then they're forgetting to pay the bills as well. They have problems with executive function and stuff, remembering, so then they're not paying the bills and overspending.
So many people have that issue with bills as well, and a lot of people with ADHD will have anxiety. It's like a comorbid condition, and they'll have letters coming through the door for bills or for late payments on things, and they'll not open them because they've got the anxiety side that can't physically open the letters, but their ADHD is causing them to not pay their bills because they're forgetting, or they're spending the money on all the impulsivity buys that they're doing. It's really common.
Well, a lot of people have been misdiagnosed with anxiety rather than ADHD, because it's become more prevalent now. More people are learning about ADHD, and especially women, because they seem to be diagnosed later on in life. In the early stages, they're being diagnosed with general anxiety disorder and things like that, because it is comorbid with ADHD. And when you're masking the symptoms, or you feel like there's something wrong with you, or why can't you do that, or you feel like you're running on a motor, it's going to cause anxiety, but it's actually a lot to do with the ADHD symptoms going untreated.
Yeah, this is why you see so many people on doing CBT and talking therapies and whatnot, and you see people on antidepressants because for all their lives they've been told they've got depression or they've got an anxiety disorder, but they've actually got ADHD. Depression is such a big one because a lot of ADHD traits can be seen in depression. Not going in the shower as often, or not cleaning your surroundings as often, or having a bit of a chaotic lifestyle can be seen as maybe being a little bit depressed. But a lot of ADHD people have those symptoms without feeling sad.
Yeah.
But it's just part of their ADHD.
Well, the thing is, it's with trauma as well. So some people, when they've suffered, quite high levels of trauma, they can have symptoms that look like ADHD. So they think it's ADHD, but these are actually symptoms that have come from the trauma. So this can make it harder sometimes to diagnose whether it's ADHD or whether it's trauma. And this is why the ADHD symptoms have got to have been present in childhood, for that ADHD diagnosis.
Yeah, and I think that's, a lot of people are saying now everyone's getting diagnosed with ADHD, loads of people have shown traits, everything around us is all ADHD, but it's because, back then ADHD wasn't talked about as much. It was put down.
But people say it's a made up thing. We see the comments saying ADHD is just made up. Tell that to the people with ADHD.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? That it's just made up.
Exactly. Or tell that to the people who have spent their lives thinking they've got, horrific anxiety and depression, and they're just not like everyone else, and they can't focus the same as everyone else, and they can't keep the house tidy, and they can't, do all of these things with your executive functioning that the average person without ADHD can do. Tell them that it's made up.
But yeah,
do you know what I mean?
People struggle every day. But this people seem to think that it's this new thing that's just came out, and everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. When in matter of fact, there's actually people in their 70s and things like that being diagnosed with ADHD now because they've struggled their whole life, and only now because there's so much knowledge around it and people are becoming more aware of it that people are going to get these diagnoses of ADHD.
And I see all these nice comments and stuff, about people, especially in the later years, who have been diagnosed with ADHD, where they're like, oh my goodness, can't believe all of this time I have struggled with ADHD symptoms, and I've always put it down to being, lazy or being stupid or just not being like as capable as everyone else, whereas this whole time I've had ADHD, and only now when they're 70 plus years old it's making sense to them.
Well, the thing though, there's like a sort of a preconception that ADHD is boys, it's young boys, and it's just because they're naughty and hyperactive, when actually ADHD can present itself in different ways for different people, and especially this is why like girls would mask it and they get diagnosed later. So just because somebody, is not outwardly like misbehaving at school doesn't mean that they don't have ADHD. They have different traits within ADHD.
Yeah, and that's so important. I actually had someone the other day, I advised them that I was getting an ADHD assessment. They're like, why are you getting an ADHD assessment? You're not hyperactive. I went, no, I'm not, but I'm still getting an ADHD assessment. And they're like, but why? You're not, the class clown. You're not someone who shouts in the, in the middle of the street. You're not someone who interrupts people, and you're not chaotic in your life. And I was like, no, I'm not. But in here, in my head, I am chaotic.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? It's the chaos inside, and it's the things that you forget, or that what you're struggling to do when you can't concentrate, and you've got work to do and you can't do it, or you end up being so like active doing loads of things, and then all of a sudden your body's kind of just shut down, your brain's shut down, and then you're sitting there sort of comatose because you like physically can't move. Or it's when you're wanting to relax but your legs go, and there's just so many nuances to ADHD that this is why it is hard for people to get a diagnosis, because if somebody's not really fully aware of all the symptoms of ADHD and they're just assuming it's are you hyperactive and things like that, then this is why people can be misdiagnosed.
Yeah, this is why I'm so glad now more information's coming out about it. Like, you see all over social media that they're explaining the symptoms of ADHD, and they're not just looking at it from a hyperactive point of view.
Yeah,
they're looking at it from both sides, the inattentiveness and the hyperactive side. So more people are becoming aware, therefore more people are going in for an assessment, because they're like, hold on a minute, well, I never knew ADHD had the attentive side of things. I didn't know that my lack of focus, or not being able to concentrate, or feeling extremely emotional all of the time contributes to ADHD. So that's why it's become such a big thing now, because people are recognising the additional symptoms that come with it.
But some people don't understand the actual trouble it can cause within people's lives. They think that ADHD is some bandwagon to jump on because it's maybe some sort of fashionable thing to have, when in matter of fact, it affects people's relationships, their jobs, their day-to-day living. It can affect their mental health, especially when it's going undiagnosed and stuff like that. It can, it can cause them to end up in debt and things like that, not being able to manage to keep on with their work or their schoolwork or anything like that. And this is why people go for the diagnosis, because they are struggling in so many different areas in their life. It's not like, oh God, let's go and have ADHD, I want to be fashionable. It's because they're struggling.
Yeah, and it isn't a bandwagon to jump on. It's a serious thing that affects a lot of people. And I think the more people that are becoming diagnosed, or doing their research into it, or recognising the symptoms and relating to the symptoms, I think good on them, because at least they're understanding themselves a little bit better. They're getting to know themselves and their traits a little bit more.
Well, this is going back to, like obviously people now, in the 70s going for diagnosis. You didn't have like the internet and things like years ago. It wasn't so easily accessible to Google something or find information. If you feel like something's wrong with you, we could just now go on Google, put in with symptoms, a list of things will come up. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it all the time, because Google normally tells you you're dying because you've got a cough. But, there's so much information out there, so it is easier to find out. But this wasn't accessible years ago.
No,
do you know? I mean, I'm 39, and when I was younger, we had dial-up internet.
I'm not that old.
I'd have to wait 3 working days to find out if that cough was killing us.
I'm phone box old.
Yeah.
I
had a phone box in my house.
Did you?
Yes, I had a phone box in my house. I had to put money in, and that what was the sound? Just like yeah. So we're not waiting that long now for this easily accessible information on ADHD anymore.
Yeah, and I think and it contributes that also negatively to the anxiety side of ADHD, because the minute that something does crop up, you're like Googling, and it's telling you 1,000,001 different things about what this one particular symptom could be, whereas actually it's probably just a bit of anxiety from your ADHD, or it's a bit of where you're feeling overwhelmed, or you're overstimulated. But Google's telling you a million of what different things.
Google can be great, but it can also, if you have any sort of health anxiety, Google wouldn't be the one to go on for that.
Avoid Google. Avoid it, especially with health anxiety.
And on that note, we will leave this podcast here. If you want to check out our website, it's at Transformed.
Yeah, transformedlifecoaching.com, or you've got our TikTok, which is Transformed Life Coaching.
Our Instagram,
yes, Transformed Life Coaching as well.
And we have a lot of workbooks on there to help you from different areas in your life also.
We do. There is free resources as well, so there is some paid for ones, and if you want the extra stuff, but there is a lot of free resources on there too, and we have a lot of videos on our TikTok where you can go to get additional information on all sorts.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.